please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
So far, so good, or fingers crossed. That's what most experts tell me when I ask them if they are satisfied with the first 500 days of India's insolvency and bankruptcy law. The setting up of the bankruptcy board, the authorization of resolution professionals, and the tribunals sticking to the timelines have all been very impressive. But there are still doubts over the conduct of the resolution professionals, the hierarchy within the committee of creditors, and a host of other regulatory hurdles that have to be crossed. Today we have with us someone who can give us probably an objective perspective of the Indian bankruptcy process and maybe advise us on how we can improve it. I have with me Brian Marcel, the co-founder of Alvarez & Marcel, the consulting company which for I think 35 years has been in this business all over the world. Also joining me in this discussion is Behram Vakil, partner at AZB. Behram, of course, has been with one of the authors of the bankruptcy law, as well as observed and handheld the process for the last 2 years. He's joining us from our London studios. Behram, Brian, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you. Brian, let me begin at the beginning, as it were. You've been watching the bankruptcy process before the law came into being, and now since May 2016, we have a law in place. What are your observations? Are things on an even keel, going good?
I think that 2.5 years ago I visited our offices here in Mumbai, and I met with a number of bankers, and I looked at their size of their NPL portfolio, their non-performing loan portfolio, and determined that as long as this non-performing loan portfolio was holding everyone down, that the GNP growth was going to be significantly retarded. It was going to be a struggle. And I also felt that our ability to service clients in this marketplace, whether they be banks or troubled companies, as long as the problem kept getting deferred, was going to be we were going to be at a loss to provide assistance to those clients. So I come back 2.5 years later, and I see the new bankruptcy law in place, and I'm delighted with what I've seen so far. I believe that it is clearly a very positive step forward. But as Barbra Streisand in her famous song said, it's not about the solution, it's all about the execution. Yes. And I think that the execution, we are working our way through how this is going to work, how there is going to be a transfer, a timely transfer, because as we work through it, what we're seeing is there's really some questions that need to be addressed. Exactly.
You know, at the moment the transfer has only come to the resolution professional. To the new buyer, we have still not seen cases actually getting resolved.
Correct.
Probably we will see a bunch of them getting resolved in the next few weeks. So in the process of the resolution professional taking control, is it smooth, or even over there, would you have suggestions?
I think it's been smooth for us in our role that we've played in being the resolution professional. I think, however, that once the winner becomes the winner, it does not necessarily mean that the assets or liabilities are being transferred to the winner. There has to be things like approval from various authorities, such as competition authorities, and until that's done, it has not been transferred. So you've got an issue today: who's going to manage this situation in the interim? Who's going to protect the assets in the interim?
Till the other regulators sign off.
Until there's official sign-off and transfer of cash.
Okay. Okay.
And a transfer of the money. So there's a number of steps that need to take place, and I think we have to work through that with the regulators.
Okay. What about the resolution professionals themselves? Has the quality otherwise been satisfactory? I mean, it's a new profession for us.
Well, it's very difficult for me to assess it. I would think that what you would want to do is you would want to select a professional based on a number of factors, such as experience, operational know-how. When have you been through such a distressed situation as this in the past, which is our business? What I find is that today the most important criteria is simply price. So the cheapest price gets the job, not necessarily the professional offering the greatest value to the equation. So it frustrates us because we feel we offer tremendous value to the creditor group.
Okay. The other problem that I think you were telling me before we started the conversation is whether the distressed, the share of the distressed company should be allowed to trade when it has been declared defaulter. That is that a big botheration?
It's not so much the under this protocol. A creditors committee is formed. The creditors committee does not seem to be any restriction on the creditors committee receiving confidential information about valuation and then turning around and trading in their claims.
Okay.
And what you find in other jurisdictions is that if you're going to join the creditors committee, you sign a restriction that you cannot trade in your claims during the period of time that you are part of this board of directors. I think that would be advisable here if it's not already required.
Okay.
And then a second item is making sure that there aren't outside influences, such as a bidder trying to influence a banker who's also a creditor by offering them additional business in order to find their bid attractive.
Okay.
It should be maximizing the value of the recovery for the estate. That should only be the issue involved here. It shouldn't be outside business or ancillary activity.
That may be a little difficult to enforce by law, but at this juncture, let me ask Behram to join the conversation. Behram, I mean, this is one question that a lot of people are asking, that after you transferred an asset from the resolution professional to a bidder who is one, there are these, you know, the SEBI sign-off, you need a competition commission sign-off. Who manages the asset in the interim? Is that something that the government is considering or you want considered?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lata. Good to join you. It's quite different from back home.
Okay.
And sorry to miss meeting Mr. Alvarez, but good to meet him electronically. You know, if Lata, if I may go back to you know, what you were just discussing, because I think it's a very crucial issue. This issue of trading credits rather than trading the shares.
Yeah.
I believe even in the US, trading of the shares is not suspended. But in the trading of credits, which was allowed, and there were quite a few trades being done both domestically and offshore, so that the banks can lighten up wherever they want and make the best call in commercial calls. This issue of insider trading and that they should not sit on the COC and do this, and the COC continuously changing, because you know the banks that are there disappear and new banks, often hedge funds, come in. This has you know, worried our major banks, and in fact, as you may know, right now IBA has said that trading by the domestic banks has been frozen.
Okay. Trading of credits only. Trading
like
of credits only.
So, of credits. So BOB selling its loan to Deutsche or something like that. So, but I think with the caveats that you don't sit on the COC, you don't use insider or confidential information. I mean, the normal story, you know, as you know, the unpublished price-sensitive info, then it should be allowed, but because to kill the liquidity completely would be a crying shame. So I hope they don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay. You were going to make other suggestions about the other regulators, like the Competition Commission.
Yeah, so I think there what's happening is I doubt very much, though it's being actively considered. You know, we have this committee for the amendments to the IBC, all the learnings that we have gained in the last 15 months. But getting blanket exemptions from Competition Commission And
I think the suggestion was more
exemptions from SEBI.
No, the suggestion is more perhaps in terms of timelines. It's a long period if they're going to take 6 months or, even one quarter. Can there be timelines for other regulatory clearances?
Absolutely. I mean, that's spot on. I think what the UK here calls accelerated approvals, so that the timelines match the timelines contained in the code. So I think that is very much on the cards and should happen.
Okay. Brian, Behram, I have to take a mandatory break over here, but I'm coming back, and I think there are two interesting, takeaways that we have from the conversation already, that loans and credits should not be traded when bankers are in the creditors committee, as well, outside influences that can be brought to bear on the bankers. We've been discussing with Brian Marcel, the co-founder of Alvarez & Marcel, and Behram Vakil, partner at AZB, on how the Indian bankruptcy process can be improved upon. At the moment, of course, it looks like in perhaps 8 weeks from now, we can have some fairly successful and high-profile resolutions. Okay, what other, lacuna or shortcomings are you noticing in process, even beyond resolution professionals?
No, I don't. I mean, I think that you've made huge strides over this period of time in terms of dealing with the problem. What I've asked my associates, though, is a question. Okay, this is the accumulation of a lot of mistakes in the past. What are we doing today to avoid the accumulation of these same mistakes in the future? And what's not clear to me is that's been addressed at all.
Okay.
So while the new legislation has addressed the NPL problem,
yeah,
I don't see necessarily that there's been that the root cause of the problem has been addressed. And until that gets addressed, your access to capital in this country is going to be impeded. And when you impede access to capital, you slow growth down, you slow innovation down, you slow entrepreneurs down.
Okay, but isn't one of the big causes of NPLs an economic downturn? Or perhaps, dilatory tactics of some of the, ministries. For instance, environment approvals take a long time, and that increases the cost of capital. How can you address the creation of future NPLs with any finality?
Well, I think what you have to do is you have to recognize, yes, an economic downturn is part of it. But in the past, because you didn't have a bankruptcy law, what you did was oftentimes you would simply extend and pretend. Okay. Extend the loan and pretend it's going to get better. I think under the new law, there will be less of an ability to do that because everyone who happens to find themselves in a default situation is going to have to deal with this new legislation. I think, however, that it is very important. I think that for access to capital, there has to be clear creditor rights, and there has to be a way to resolve this, or to under the bankruptcy law, to resolve this in an expeditious fashion. Okay.
Well, there have been some new rules of NPA resolution that the Reserve Bank has put out. Bankers are not happy with it, but that may answer some of the questions you are raising in terms of starting to take resolution actions on the 31st day. I mean, as soon as the first time default is noticed. So maybe that's the first step. But to come to you, Behram, the minimum alternate tax still is not entirely resolved. The debt reduction that a new owner gets is only partly set off with carry forward losses. Is that something your committee is looking at?
Yes, Lata, that is something we are aware of. But we have to remember that sometimes they ask for the moon and stars, and they have to live with just the moon. But we are looking at it. But the point Brian raised is a very, very crucial point, which you know very well, that the extend and pretend, I'm happy to say, after the circular 10 days ago, I think that regime is behind us. There's no question, there's no place to hide anymore. So that's done. But the governance issue, I think just yesterday the finance minister also said it, that the credit culture and the governance change in the banking system, which was supposed to be brought out by the BBB, etc., that if we don't do that, then every 10-15 years we're going to run this NPL cycle, which doesn't make sense at all. I mean, that's really destructive.
Okay.
So we have to make those changes which Indra, Dhanush, etc. promised, but I think have somewhere fallen by the wayside, and you know better why.
Okay. Well, so what you're speaking of is generally a better standard of banking at the public sector banks. That was what the finance minister was hinting at, and there are some who believe that that can be done with privatization of some of the public sector banks. Would that be an answer, Behram?
I think that's again moon and stars, you know. I mean, some of them maybe. I think all of them, I personally, this is just a personal view, very, very unlikely.
Okay.
But to allow them to have better governance, and we all know those issues. I mean, you can't pay them 1/5 and have all kinds of restraints on them. So tie up their feet and say, now keep running.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair point that many people have made, actually. Today we had even Mr. Narayan Murthy making that point. But two or three other issues, Behram, while we have you with us. Cleaning up of some of the unclaimed liabilities. I mean, after all, the Creditors Committee and the NCLT faces most of the liabilities, but there are still some uncleared liabilities. That's not answered, is what some of the resolution professionals tell us. As well, you know, the resolution plan, the current IBC only looks at the company as a going concern, not if it is to be a slump sale. Are these problems being addressed by the new committee?
This was brought up, and I think I do not think that we are going to change that slump sale. That may be down the road, but at this point you can certainly do that in liquidation, but we are you know, pretty focused on maximizing value in the going concern. Okay. Of course, the successful bidder is absolutely free to restructure down the road. So, but I think that change at this point may be too early.
An important lacuna which a lot of people point out is that in India, a lot of operations of a company, distressed companies included, is in various group companies. I mean, we have seen that with the Amtech group, we have seen it with the Videocon group. But, you know, the NCLT registration or the suit has to be filed in the place where the head office is located. Is there a way to bring this group concept into the law, Behram?
Yeah, I think that is also being actively looked at.
Okay.
And, you know, taking it one step further also, of course, cross-border, which we have not done so far, but the drafts are, have already been worked on.
Okay. Okay, well, a lot of the questions that at least industry is raised is being answered by a new committee of lawyers who are looking at the bankruptcy law. Brian, any winding up thoughts that you would like to see in the bankruptcy process?
Well, hopefully they're inviting the operating professionals, because there is a legal aspect, but there's also an operational aspect to this.
And on the operational aspect?
I hope the operational aspect is being captured as well by the group of
as in the quality of the professionals and their ability to operate.
Well, no, just understanding things like if you were to take over a situation in this interim period, you might have to hire security, you might have to hire and fire certain people, you might have to stop certain actions from taking place, and until the various commissions give their approval, someone's going to have to be responsible for that. So I think that input would be valuable.
Okay. Behram, they don't have the power? The RP doesn't have the power to hire and fire people or hire new services like security? That's not available now at the moment?
No, they certainly have. But I think Brian is saying that at the committee level also, are we looking at the operational issues? And I think, yes, it's a very mixed bag. It's certainly not just full of lawyers, that's for sure.
All right. So will there be a code of conduct?
Real players in there too.
Oh, good. Will there be a code of conduct that will come up for the resolution professionals? Should we expect that as well from the committee?
I think, no, that's, you don't need to wait for that. I mean, that Mr. Sahu, you know, he's working literally 24 hours. So that's very much ongoing.
All right. Well, actually, we're out of time, but there is a bunch of advice and takeaways from our guests today, Behram and Brian. One, that this trading of credits is something perhaps will be frozen in the days to come. Probably some kind of timelines could be given to other regulators as well. There is a committee that is looking at the bankruptcy code, and perhaps some of the problems that Brian and Behram are pointing out will get ironed out in the days to come. But 8 weeks or perhaps 12 weeks from now, maybe we will be able to celebrate that probably ₹1 trillion of distressed assets have actually been resolved by the bankruptcy law, even before its 2nd anniversary is celebrated. Brian, Behram, thank you very much for joining me in this.